I really appreciate everyone being here this evening for our fall gathering. And as we start out, I just also want to thank our two event sponsors for the evening, Legacy Venture and the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. And your support really means a lot to us, so thank you so much for sponsoring the event this evening. So before I get started with a few brief opening remarks, I just thought I'd walk through the agenda. So we have just a really inspiring program this evening. After I give opening remarks, I'm going to introduce Allison Elliott, our SV2 board chair, and she is going to introduce our guest of honor for this evening, and we're really looking forward to having Rick share with us. And then following that, we have two wonderful social impact organizations speaking tonight. And so they're going to share with us the work on the ground that they're doing and how they're working alongside their communities. And I just think that's such a special treat. And after that, there's plenty of times afterwards just to continue connecting with each other and over coffee and dessert. So feel free to just continue to do the connecting that you've been doing up until now. So as I was thinking about the theme farther together this evening, I just could not keep my mind off what's been going on in the news, both locally and internationally. And many of you may have noticed that last week was the United Nations General Assembly meeting. And so I really found that really interesting to see what they were talking about and what they were writing news releases on. And some of the news they had was pretty sobering. I mean, there was a real call to respond to challenges that affect what they were saying pretty much all countries in the world today. Issues of poverty, large inequalities, gender-based discrimination, and climate change. Those were the ones they named. But you know, one of the things that was hopeful is they said also there's been a lot of progress over the last 10 or 20 years. They said, first of all, and I remember this, there was extreme poverty, and we still have that, but they said, it's been reduced by a lot. The whole area of infant mortality has dropped quite a bit. They said access to energy in a lot of the developing world is going up, and also decent work opportunities are rising in many parts of the world. But they indicate there's just so much more to do, that we're far from where we need to be. And again, they talked about conflicts going on in the world, what they're now calling the climate crisis, gender-based violence, and persistent inequalities. And then 2 weeks ago, I actually got to hear Governor Newsom talk. And I learned a lot from that, because one of the things I learned was, even though California, we are so rich in resources here, we are now the highest poverty state in the United States, adjusted for cost of living. That was sort of sobering. But he also just said, the biggest opportunity to address some of that is just providing access to more affordable housing. I mean, that's just one of the things that he really talked about. So again, there's, people understand the root cause. They understand there's some things that can be done to move that forward. So I just want to admit to all of you, I don't know how you all feel about this, but sometimes the state of the world can feel a little heavy to me. These issues can feel a little big. And that is why I think being in a community together is so important. And that's why being in a community going farther together is sort of our theme for this evening, because I actually have a lot of hope right now around some of these issues, because I have the opportunity to see there's some really positive initiatives starting up. And I'm in the room with people that have some really exciting ideas. And more importantly, I think I'm with a group of other people who care deeply about these issues also. And that is just such an encouragement to all of us to be in that type of community together. So when I think about going farther together in our broad SV2 community, and when I mean our broad SV2 community, I mean our partners, I mean our funder allies, I mean our grantees and our impact investees, our broad community. There's three big ways that we really want to go farther together. And the first one does start with partners in terms of transforming our own giving and engagement. And so in SV2, we have really strong values in our partnership and a really strong culture. And we really support each other along our giving journeys. And we want to be more generous and effective and compassionate givers. And so we all are supporting each other to just do that in our own lives. The second thing is we really want to support and strengthen really promising social ventures, social enterprises and nonprofits. And they're doing the hard work on the ground. They're facing the toughest challenges. So what we want to do is provide access to financial capital and human capital to help them. SV2 provides 100% unrestricted funding.
Yeah.
We gave 500, we gave $525,000 away directly last year, but here's what's really touching you guys. On our partner survey this year, the people who chose to self-report it, they gave over $1 million more on top of that $520,000 to organizations they learned about through SV2. And as an addition, as you know, we assign lead partners to all of our grantees and impact investees. We provide access to our networks. We provide access to capacity building resources. We just want to do everything we can to support these organizations. And then I think the final way is we really want to be a bridge between different parts of our community and different social impact leaders. So we want to be a bridge between our communities in Silicon Valley and around the world and get rid of the segregation. We want to be a bridge between not only the partners in our community, but our funder allies in the Valley. And we are so fortunate to have amazing funder allies in this Valley. When we do our grant rounds, almost every one of our grant rounds now has a funder ally where we have access to program officers cross-sharing their learnings with us, where they're providing access to organizations to us that just broadens the range of our knowledge of organizations doing great work. And then the last thing that just really is inspiring to me is I get to hear the most amazing personal partner stories. And what I share with people is almost what happens inside of SV2 is almost the tip of the iceberg compared to what I can see is going on outside of SV2, because people are just so activated. They're constantly engaging other networks. They're constantly engaging people that are working in government. They're constantly working with other nonprofits in different ways. And so I just think from a point of view of just thinking about going farther together, we just want to be that kind of community where people feel that they can engage in whatever way or level that is really activating to them and really feeling a sense of meaning and impact in the world and in the community. So one of the things, if you want to just learn a little bit more about SV2, is tonight, I didn't bring a copy up with me, but on your chair, here I can grab this, we have our brand new impact report. So actually I'll take that out a second, but Sharon's one step ahead. But here's our new impact report, so you all have it. And so I just invite you all, feel free to take that home this evening and read through it and just learn a little bit more about what we did. The second thing I wanted to mention is just what's going to be happening in the upcoming year. So we just have some really comprehensive programming this year, and the whole staff team and I and our board, everybody, we're just really excited about it. So this year we have 4 grant rounds, monthly impact investing working group, learning sessions, family philanthropy programming, and community events. And so this year we have 4 grant rounds, and you might wonder, how do we choose these grant round topics? And one of the biggest inputs is our partner survey every year. So this year on our partner survey, 2 of the top issues that were chosen was the environment and affordable housing, because we don't choose little topics at SV2. I mean, we pick the big and important ones, right? And so, we're facing that head on. We have an affordable housing grant round that just kicked off. For those of you that want to join it, you feel welcome to do that. We'll have our second meeting this month. We have amazing funder allies. We have the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, both as our funder allies for that grant round. And then we're going to be having an environment lightning grant round in the spring, and that's just in the planning stages, so stay tuned for that one. We also have a lightning grant round that's going to be coming up pretty soon, and in fact, I really encourage you to sign up in the next week. It's our Performing Arts grant round, and for those of you that went through the spring one, it was really great because, first of all, these organizations are performing arts, so they're doing amazing work supporting marginalized groups in our area, giving them a performing arts and a voice and an expression, right? But they're also just themselves just very interesting organizations to learn about and really inspiring to hear from. And so, again, we are very blessed to have the Hewlett Foundation both being our financial sponsor for that grant and our funder ally. So I really encourage you to engage with that if you're interested. And then finally, two of the other top issue areas in our survey was wanting to learn more about education and economic opportunity in our local communities. So in January through the spring, for our first time ever at SV2, we are going to be doing a community deep dive grant round where we are going to be picking a local community. We are going to be learning about not only their needs, but really their opportunities and their potential. And we are going to be supporting organizations in that community to help them reach that potential. And so that is what's going to be coming up also in the spring. We also have monthly impact investing working group meetings, and those are great meetings because we get to hear from just the coolest, most innovative social entrepreneurs every single month in those meetings, and we're excited to discover those this year. We're excited this year to also be able to, again, we'll sponsor a few of those and invest in a few of those in our impact investing portfolio. So again, any month, feel free to drop in on that one as well. And then for learning this year, we have 3 different types of learning we're going to be doing. Issue-focused learning. We'll be doing learning around, that's sort of what we call the how of giving, which is just how to be more effective in giving practices. But we started a new learning last year called the why of giving, which we call Get Proximate, for those of you that are familiar with Brian Stevenson. And I love our Get Proximate learning initiative. It's really the opportunity to have very deep experiential learning with some of our neighbors in our communities. And so we have 2 sessions coming up on sort of effective giving. One is the CEO of the Center for Collective Philanthropy, Phil Buchanan, is going to be joining us the end of this month. How cool is that? A whole discussion with our community from the president of the Center for Collective Philanthropy. So that's a great session to come to. And then we have another wonderful session in early November on nonprofit governance best practices. And so anybody that either wants to be on a nonprofit board or is in one, that is one not to miss. And then for our Get Proximate kickoff for the year, we are actually going to be partnering with Child Advocates of Silicon Valley. And I'm really excited about this because these are very deeply immersive experiences where you really do get a feel. And so one of the ways we're going to do this year is we're going to be understanding what it is like to be a foster child in dependency court in Santa Clara County. And this is going to be an opportunity to really be beta testers for really some immersive experiences that they're going to be testing out with us. So the other thing, in addition to our learning programs, I don't want to not talk about family philanthropy because we know formative life experiences shape your lifelong practices of service and giving. And this year we are going to have 5 SV2 Kids events to do community service work as families in our local communities with local nonprofits. Our SV2 Teens program is kicking off in January, and our teens will get together and learn together, but they're also going to do a grant round again together. They're actually going to be giving together this year around the issue topic that they pick. And we've also opened up a few of our other events to our teens this year if they just want to sit in and attend some of those. So we really are expanding our family philanthropy program. And then finally, community events. So we have a variety of just engagement opportunities. Tonight is one, but we also have interest circles. So we have interest circles this year in family philanthropy, impacting investing, and also in the environment. And we have, for this year, again, for the second year, board-hosted dinners. And if you've not gone to one of those yet, they are really fun, but it's just a way to go really deep over dinner with our community. And we also have our monthly SV2 book club, so we're going to continue to have that running this whole year. So there's just a lot of opportunity. Just engage in what's comfortable to you. In your impact report, there's a program guide that has on the back of the slide a lot of the events coming up. There's even more events than these, and so if you want the complete list of events, just feel free to go to our SV2 website. So in closing, I just feel developing networks of relationships is especially important today. It's just core to who we are at SV2. And you know, one of the things I realized is that a ton of research has been done over the last few years on the importance of building social capital. That's what they call it, building social capital. And one of the things I learned is in the last 30 years in the United States, there's actually been a pretty big decline in social capital. But they've also learned through research that the impact of building social capital is outsized. And what the research shows is that the ways people in relationship with each other can reach goals are far beyond people acting as individuals alone. The intrinsic satisfaction that people enjoy being part of a community is much higher than being alone. And there's also this proven additional benefit to others in society that are adjacent to that community that always occurs. And so I just want to thank you to our SV2 community and all of our friends for partnering with us to truly unleash the resources and talents of our Silicon Valley community. We really look forward to going farther together this year to achieve more meaningful social impact. And I would now like to introduce our board chair, Allison Elliott, to introduce our very special guest for this evening.
Great. Well, I have the pleasure on behalf of SV2 partners past and present to thank two people who have been wonderful long-term friends of SV2, Rick Williams and Carol Larson. Rick and Carol are well known as leaders in philanthropy here in Silicon Valley as well as nationally. Carol as president and CEO of the David and Lucille Packard Foundation, and Rick as the CEO of the Sobrato Family Foundation. And this year, both of them are retiring. So tonight, we'd like to honor their work and extend our deep thanks for their many years of supporting SV2 and its mission. So you all realize that the Packard and Sobrato foundations are larger than SV2. But interestingly, all of us share three strong priorities in our grant making. First, the importance of multi-year unrestricted grants. As Linda mentioned, that's what SV2 does, and it's something that's all too rare in philanthropy, yet essential to help nonprofits build strong, high-impact organizations. Secondly, the critical need to support local community-based organizations here in Silicon Valley. Three, the power of collaboration and partnerships to expand impact. At SV2, we have benefited from Carol and Rick's collaboration and support in so many ways. At various points, the Packard Foundation has provided critical funding to help build SV2's organizational strength. For example, most recently, they helped to fund SV2's CEO search. And grants from the Sobrato Family Foundation have been invaluable in helping SV2 to grow. And of course, all of us at SV2 also enjoy our beautiful home in the Redwood Shores Sobrato Center, thanks to the Sobrato Family Foundation's commitment to provide nonprofits with space at below market rents. Throughout their tenures, both Rick and Carol have generously shared their wisdom with SV2's leadership, Jen Rattay, Linda Laser, and past board chairs. And Rick and their foundations have shared knowledge and expertise in grant rounds like economic opportunity, education, and the environment as SV2 funder allies. Unfortunately, Carol was not able to be here with us tonight. She had a family situation that came up, but we are delighted that Rick has joined us. Rick has led the Sobrato Family Foundation's commitment to make Silicon Valley a place of opportunity for all residents by expanding access to high-quality education, career pathways, and essential human services. Here in the Valley, where the deep divide between the comfortable and the struggling continues to persist, Rick has inspired and supported our learning, helping us to understand the systems that stand in the way of change, and showing us how we can continue to take action to help advance that change. So please join me in thanking Rick for all he has done for SV2 and for Silicon Valley.
part of tonight. But it is actually absolutely a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm going to make sure I'm speaking loud enough. I'm the one that is retired. Carol's working on that. And so I would say right from the beginning that it took a request from Linda and it took a request from SV2 to make me come out and put on a jacket. I haven't had on for quite a while. And I say that because if you look at those slides that were presented, that's kind of how I decide, that's how I try very hard to live my work as running the Serato Family Foundation. And it just amazes me that we now have SV2 and all of you that are going to become evangelists for the same kind of message. And I think that message can resonate here, and there's a lot that we can do. So I'll talk about that real quickly. I only have a few minutes. They want me to impart some words of wisdom. I don't know. I can talk to you about, bobsledding and whistling and other stuff that I've been doing lately. But I will share a little bit of what I know. I've been in philanthropy. I started my philanthropy journeys in 2001. And so at that point, I became the National Program Director of the Charles and Helen Schwab Foundation. And that really launched what for me was an amazing journey, an amazing career to how do you help families, particularly, which is most of my work has been with, engage in communities in a different way, engage with each other, their networks, in a way that opens opportunities, creates opportunities for people that have been left behind. And it's been an amazing ride. I've had the pleasure to do philanthropy locally, at a state level, and at a national level. I had the pleasure to do philanthropy on Indian reservations in the Deep South, in the North and South. So every corner of the United States, I've had the opportunity to do that. And over my time, I'm trying to figure out how much money I've given out over those years. I really can't, but it's significant. And I think it's not about the money, it's about what has been done. And in each of those cases, we've left behind doors for people to follow us. And so I'm going to give you about 3 things that I would share with you about what I would hope you would think about in your giving, and then a couple things about how you do your giving. But Linda, I think, captured most of my talking points on the slides because they were very relevant. So clearly, if you look at Silicon Valley, the top pressing needs really quickly that everyone knows is the lack of affordable housing and the lack of a modern transportation infrastructure. So there's going to be a lot of philanthropic dollars put into that and a lot of government dollars put into that, and that goes without saying. That's where it should be. I would add a third to that top tier list, and that is education. Most people, when they start a foundation, they get in to do education. And I don't begrudge them that. In this region, one of the wealthiest regions in the country, we need to work on our educational infrastructure. It is not working for all kids in our community, and it should be second to none. So I would think, you look at those 3, education, housing, and transportation, those are the big 3. If you want to make Silicon Valley the place that we all want it to be, those are the things to look at. So I'm not going to talk about those. And I'm not going to talk about art, I'm not going to talk about environment, all those things I'm passionate about. There are a lot of great things for you to put your money to. I'm going to talk about things that people rarely talk about when they give these discussions. And I hope I just leave with you an opportunity to think about these things in a way that when you're thinking about your giving, you kind of remember, oh, well, Rick said this and it may spark something. I would ask that in addition to all those great things, and I'm very much a believer in that it's an and situation. It's not or. You can do this and that. There's opportunities to do that. That we focus our energy on thinking about how we can develop vibrant, diverse, and sustainable communities. That you think about how your money can do that. I think we're in a real, we talk about an environmental crisis, we're in a real community crisis. We're in a real neighbor-to-neighbor crisis. And so anything you can do with your funding that really helps communities be their better selves, I would urge you to think about. We're in a point right now where, depending on where you live, what zip code you live in, and sadly, the value of the house you were raised in, will determine how healthy you are, your economic progress, what kind of job you get, and many other factors in life. We need to try to break that. I'm not suggesting what kind of grant you give or what kind of resource you give, but we need to try to break that and develop communities that are going to work for everyone. So I just would urge you to think about communities as you think about the other areas that you're giving. The other thing I would do, and I know there's some providers here, and I hope this will resonate with them, but for you as you're thinking about your giving as well, one of the things that I had the most fun doing was being an amplifier of voices. Taking my voice and my platform and my resources to amplify what's doing. I would urge you to the extent that you can, and this is what I've learned over all these years of philanthropy, is to be an amplifier for community voices and grassroots organizations that are trying to work on structural and systemic barriers. They're trying to break down structural and systemic barriers. They don't get enough funding, they don't get enough recognition. They're usually small organizations, but they have their ear to the ground in a way that we just will never have anymore. It was always important for me to get out of my office and go talk with organizations that were doing that kind of work so that I remain grounded, and it helped my grant management. So to the extent that you can engage with these organizations, you don't have to fund all of them, but listen to them, and, hear them, trust them, support them. That's going to be how things are going to change in communities, and our communities are going to get better. The last, in terms of the what, that I would share with you is, and Linda touched on it a little bit. It's not an area that I have ever funded, but it's been one that's on my mind lately. And I've had a lot of conversation with Larry Kramer Hewlett and others that have these particular projects. Think about areas that protect our democracy. To the extent that it is voter rights, speech, giving people access, you should not, and fortunately we don't have that here, but you should not have to wait 4 hours to vote in a particular community. So things that you can do with your resources, with your platforms, with your network that just protect democracy. Doesn't matter what side you're on, that's an irrelevant conversation. Our democracy is still a test, and we are still trying to figure it out. It's only a couple hundred years old, it's the longest ever, but it's still a test. And we forget that it's a test, and we think it's gonna last forever. We need to be mindful of that and not let that go. So with those are the whats, let me real quickly, because I know my time is running out, to give you a couple things on the how that I think I found helpful, and I hope that you find helpful. One of the how is, don't be afraid to take risks in your philanthropy. Philanthropy, as has been said, should be the VC capital for social enterprise. I think we've moved a little bit away from that, trying to work on logic models and everything else, which I'm okay with and I'm actually supportive of. But there needs to be a little bit of heart, a little bit of belief, a little bit of passion in our work. And sometimes you just have to do something because you think this is the right thing to do for the community or for the people you're trying to serve. So don't be afraid to take a risk, and stay in the game for a while. Unlike building a product, changing human life and human direction will take a significant amount of time, and so you can't do it in a year or two. You're going to have to stay in the game. Then want to build trusting partnerships with the community. I think one of the some of the most important grants I gave were ones to very small organizations that I just had a relationship with. We come in way too often, and I try to always check myself to make sure I didn't do that, but we come in way too often thinking we know how to solve this problem, or we know how to do this, or we know how to do that. I urge you to lead with trust, and lead with understanding, and lead with respect that they've been living this stuff and working this stuff for a long time. And what they need from you is your expertise and what you bring, but they need it in a collaborative way, not as a, what have you been doing, you're doing this wrong. And then finally, I would add that be optimistic. I think what I tried to do very much during my time is to make sure that people never forgot where we could go if we put our mind to it. There's so much negativity out there. You are in a blessed place, and SV2, what you do and the people that are here and the people that aren't here and your funder colleagues are in a unique place that we get to be the people that tell the good story all the time. And we don't do that enough. We don't actually tell our story very well at all. And a lot of people have heard me speak, tell it. I do a whole talk about that. And so people don't really understand what we do. So I would urge you, be optimistic, and in doing that, be transparent with your work. Be happy. Be in a mindful that you believe that this vision is attainable. Because if you don't believe it, no one will believe it, and we won't achieve what we want to do. So that's a little bit of wisdom I've had over the last 18 years or so. And I really appreciate you guys being here, and thank you so much. You guys are leaving the breadcrumbs for the people that are coming behind, and I think that the community is going to be a better place. The community that we love can be better, and it's all because you're going to show the way. So thank you very, very much.
Our next speaker is Tasha Freitas. She is the CEO and co-founder of Needs List. Needs List is a mission-driven business, and they're also an SV2 impact investee. We made an investment in Needs List in 2018. I'm going to let Tasha tell you more about Needs List and their work, but I wanted to share a short summary in their own words, which is, Needs List is disaster relief for the 21st century, tech-enabled, locally powered, transparent, direct, and run by women. It is my honor to introduce and welcome Tasha.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here tonight because usually I have to stand up and pitch in 3 minutes, and here instead I've got like a whole 10 minutes, and I've got the best theme ever, which is Further Together and partnerships. And there's no way I would be here without those partnerships, so that's what I'm going to tell you a little bit about tonight. Our partnerships internally with our team, with our grassroots partners, with individuals, with the private sector, and last but not least, with the public sector. But before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about Needs List and how we got started and what we're up to, because not all of you were on my first Zoom pitch with the whole crowded room. So this past Monday was Rosh Hashanah, and that's the Jewish New Year. And it's a really fitting time for me to be here because Needs List actually, like our birth, was 5 years ago on Rosh Hashanah. I was living in France, and I wanted to do something to help all the refugees that were arriving in Europe. So I asked one of the women who, her daughter went to school with my kids, and I asked her if her mosque was involved, and she said, she came up to me like on Friday morning and said, Tasha, I'm going down tomorrow because I heard there are all these Syrian refugees and you need help right nearby, do you want to come? So normally it's a Jewish holiday and I take off, and I was like, well, what's better or more important than this? So I went with her, and I ended up coordinating all this local aid. And it was really chaotic. Everybody needed different things. The needs were changing day by day. If any of you have worked in crisis response, you know what I'm talking about. And at the same time, I had no way to communicate what was needed. And people kept bringing the wrong stuff. Like, sometimes I do a pitch with this stuffed camel because somebody brought a stuffed camel to help, thinking that would be what was needed. And a lot of it comes from good intentions, and they just didn't know. So I ended up looking online because I have a tech background, and I figured there was like some plugin for our WordPress site, and I couldn't find anything. So I used the wedding registry just to communicate needs in real time. So that's how we got started, and the more I dug into it, I realized that thanks. It's not that I couldn't find it, it's that it didn't exist because we have a super outdated aid system that is in desperate need of innovation. And so our current systems, if any of you have been involved in any of the local wildfire relief, there are daily conference calls that go on for hours. There are Post-it notes in people's offices, there are long email threads, and if you're lucky, you get a spreadsheet. So we're talking 1960s systems for growing displacement, and it just, something had to be done. So that's how, the other thing that we realized was that at the same time, people like yourselves who represented companies and foundations and academic institutions all wanted to help, and they wanted to get their institutions involved, but they didn't know how. So that's really was the thought process behind Needs List. thank you. This is like a sneak preview of Needsless 2.0 that we're building right now. So what we do is we give nonprofits, local grassroots nonprofits, the tools to communicate their needs in real time. They're all aggregated into a centralized database and matched with offers of products, services, and cash. So really just kind of a natural marketplace creating efficiency and automating a lot of like this matching that's happening with the Post-it notes right now. So we got started formally 3 years ago. We've moved over $1 million of resources in over 20 countries, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the partnerships that made that happen. So the first thing I want to talk about is my team. My co-founder Amanda and I knew that, like from the very beginning, if we were going to make this work, we had to be working in collaboration with displaced communities. And so we have 10 people on our team now. We represent 8 countries. We just hired a man named Javid, who is he's a Rohingyan who was the only person who's ever escaped from the Isle of Manus, made it all the way to Canada where he received asylum. We brought on a guy named Hani, who was a Sudanese doctor working with MSF, Doctors Without Borders, who's now implementing our chatbot project in Uganda. And most recently, our product designer, Sisa, who is not just an extraordinary designer, she joined our team because she's committed to this, because she comes from the Philippines, and she sees the impact of climate change on her home country. Oh, and it's your investment that let us hire some of these folks, so thank you. So at the individual level, this is Ala. When I first started Needs List, we needed a logo, right? And so I was like asking around and we had no money, and a guy I knew said, my brother is a designer, he can probably help. So Ala was actually in Aleppo at the time. This was 2016, and it was during the siege on Aleppo. And I'm going back and forth with him on Facebook, and he's sending me logos every day. And the whole thing like completely blew my mind. Because I'm like, I've got a US passport, I've got like an Ivy League degree, I'm running a tech startup, and he is living in the middle of a conflict zone, and he's the one helping me. So that was really important for me in understanding like what happens even in natural disasters. Like there's times we all have needs, there's times we can all help, and how can we create that infrastructure to bridge the two? Okay, so this on the grassroots level, like the first people and organizations to adapt Needs List, like they're not the big NGOs, right? Like so we went to folks that can make decisions quickly. And one of them, this is a woman from the School Box Project. I don't know if you guys have heard of them. They're based in Sonoma County. And when we first started working with them, they were working with children, refugees on the island of Lesbos. And this woman here is holding a defibrillator. They posted that need. It was one of the first needs on Needs List. And another nonprofit across the island had an extra one in their warehouse. So they brought it over. And it was like, again, one of those moments where you're like, okay, there's something here. We've got something here. And what was important to us there is that it actually wasn't like a donor or a company meeting that need. It was another nonprofit. And we're like, okay, what if we can create a way just for these nonprofits even to start talking to each other? And then the next, thanks. So what was really interesting is we started off really just focusing on refugee aid, and then the School Box Project got hit directly by the Sonoma fires. And they said, hey, Tasha, can we use Needs List for disaster relief, like for this fire relief? I'm like, we're like a startup, you're supposed to focus on one thing, you know? But we're like, okay, try it. And so it's been really essential for us to work with these really localized grassroots groups because they're nimble and flexible, and they can work with us to help us be nimble and flexible and grow with our users. So that's been awesome. So really quickly, we realized the needs totally outweighed the resources, and we're a marketplace, and that's no good, right? Like you gotta like match supply and demand. So we started working with thinking about how we could work with companies. And TripAdvisor was the first big company that we worked with, and I really, what you were just saying about taking risks, that's so huge for us because not just like the first investors, but also like Kayla, the woman who runs social impact at TripAdvisor, who said, yeah, like, okay, they're a for-profit company, and we usually work with nonprofits, and this is like totally different, but we want to work with them. And so now, like, because TripAdvisor joined us and because Kayla made that happen, we've had lots of other big companies work with us. And also TripAdvisor employees have been connected directly to social impact startups around the world for 2 years now, so it's been really exciting. Okay, and last but not least, you knew I would get to the public sector. So I started, my background's in urban planning and public policy, and from the beginning I was like, we can't do this without public sector buy-in, but I also knew that they were not going to be those early adapters. But what's pretty amazing is just in the last couple of months, we've started partnerships with the city, the county, the state level, and literally like 3 weeks ago, we got a call from USAID saying we want to use Needs List to coordinate private sector engagement for the Bahamas for Hurricane Dorian relief. And if you want to see a challenge, try negotiating with the federal government in the middle of a hurricane. Like, we made it happen. It's been really exciting. Like, the next day we posted the site and we got an offer of a helicopter, which is really cool, and it's like in the process of being matched right now. So all of that has happened because we tried to be flexible and we're willing to partner. Okay, so when we started Needsless, we had like no money, and I'm not a coder, and I actually thought a pitch was just part of a baseball field. So all we really had was a knowledge of the power of partnerships, and that's really why we're here today. So I just want to thank all of you for helping move those partnerships forward, because I think, just for the last slide, please. The reality is that the scale of the problems that we're facing as a society is, as you said, is completely daunting. I actually was in New York last week, and I sense that dauntingness, and I don't know if that's a word, but also that hope. But we're looking at a climate emergency that is at a point that we're not just talking about 1 billion people being displaced, we're talking about extinction. And so there is no way that when we're facing problems like this, we can do it alone. We absolutely have to have those partnerships at every level. So thank you for letting us be here and to work with all of you, and we hope we will continue to do so, because I don't think we can afford not to partner. So thank you.
Next, we have the pleasure of hearing from Intercity Advisors, which is SV2's newest grantee. ICA was selected in last year's entrepreneurship grant round, and they are a nonprofit which invests in high potential businesses and entrepreneurs through business advising, education and engagement, and providing access to capital. And it is my great pleasure to welcome Allison Kelly, CEO of ICA, and Diana Tremblay, who is the Director of Acceleration at ICA.
Wow, that was so inspiring. Thank you, Tasha. Hello, my name is Allison Kelly. I'm the CEO of ICA. ICA is a 24-year-old organization that's been operating in Oakland. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. My journey to ICA, I'm a newbie here. I've only been with the organization for 6 months. 3 months. Goodness, time is flying.
Feels like 6 months.
Just feels like 6 months some days. But my background is, after college, I went into the Peace Corps. I lived in West Africa. And I went in thinking I wanted to be a human rights lawyer. And I came out wanting to use business as a force for social change. So that's been really the thread that I followed in my career, and that led me to this incredible organization. Diana, how did you end up at ICA?
Yeah, I have been at ICA for 5 years. I started as an intern, and my joke is I just never left. So they can't get rid of me. But I grew up in Oakland, and I see the power of small business. And when I really learned a lot more about ICA, I was like, I have to be there and I have to stay there.
And the funny story about me and Diana is I actually tried to hire her about 10 years ago to a previous organization, and she went to ICA instead. So
It's our family.
I had to come here in order to work with her.
So, Allison, you mentioned that you're going to be here, and really, what really brought you to ICA?
Yeah, so the mission of ICA is to invest in high potential businesses that are creating economic freedom for those who need it most. And this is a mission that we have pursued out of our founding 23 years ago, which was really founded on this idea that Michael Porter made famous as an economist coming out of Harvard, that really the best way to overcome inner city blight was to invest in small businesses and the jobs that they create in their communities.
And we have pursued that mission steadfastly for the last 23 years, and we've had different chapters within our organization. So, originally focusing on the social capital networks that we were talking about earlier, and the education and the advising network that we had. And then we focused a chapter on good jobs. What is a good job? How do you measure a good job? Why is it important to a community? And these days, looking at the data in our world, looking at the racial and gender wealth gap is a great opportunity for ICA to motivate and activate its resources to make change in our local communities.
Thanks. And I think really thinking about what ICA has been able to achieve for these entrepreneurs in the 23 years, can you talk a little bit about the impact?
Yes, and this is where I need my notes because I've only been here for 3 months. But, the organization in its history has worked with over 600 small businesses in our communities. We serve the 9-county Bay Area region. We've helped those companies raise over $300 million of capital, growth capital. We've supported these companies as they've created over 5,500 jobs. We have directly, over our experience, after having identified a gap in access to capital, we then raised capital and have deployed over $2.5 million worth of capital. And that capital deployed is now worth twice its value. So that's our impact today.
Right, and speaking of impact and longevity of organizations, can you talk a little bit about the companies we see here behind us and how they have interacted with ICA?
Yeah, so we chose some companies that you all may have heard of, Blue Bottle, Revolution Foods, Numi Tea. These are companies that ICA engaged with 20 years ago, 15 years ago, before anybody knew who they were. Blue Bottle, we learned earlier today, I learned earlier today. We engaged with them when they were a year-old company operating out of a garage. How Silicon Valley of them. And what we have learned, which I appreciate what you said, Rick, about the time it takes of these investments to pay off. I mean, one thing that we know about small businesses is that most small businesses fail. And so we are investing in these businesses, particularly focused on businesses run by people of color and women, to ensure that they not only survive, but that they grow and thrive. So that's a little bit about ICA's history. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the accelerator. Can you tell me something about that, Diana?
I'm so happy to share. I could talk about the accelerator all day, but I won't do that. So we have a business accelerator. It's about 4 months, and really the purpose of the accelerator is to get high potential companies access to capital. And when we think about capital, we think about financial capital, but we also think about social capital, which, as Linda mentioned, it's something that not all companies have access to, and we use our networks and we let people borrow our social capital. Like we borrow our partner social capital too in our work that we're doing down here now in San Jose. And really we want to be making sure the companies can grow as fast as they can, sustainably, create good jobs, build wealth building opportunities, and really thrive in their communities.
And so how has that resulted? What are some of the results of this?
Yeah, so we launched our accelerator in this iteration in 2016, and in that time, that first cohort has raised $18 million. That's across 10 companies. These are high growth companies that are dedicated to good job creation and wealth building. The companies have also increased their revenue 130% from when we started working with them. And they've also grown jobs 78%. And Reen, who you see back here, she's one of our entrepreneurs who was she's right in front, one of our entrepreneurs who was in our accelerator, and she came in at a lower revenue, but you know what she did? She grew her revenue 300%, and she raised over $500,000. She went from a farmer's market stall to a brick and mortar bakery, and is really thinking about how does she create a restaurant group. So that's the kind of work we do with companies to really help them realize their value in their business and their own potential.
Yeah, that's what's really astounding to me is hearing these stories and realizing that these entrepreneurs are really stepping in and seeing themselves as leaders for the first time. Can you tell us about some of the entrepreneurs that have come through the program?
Yeah. So our entrepreneurs, as you can see, are very diverse. 50% women, 60% people of color, and we're really working with companies and entrepreneurs, as Allison mentioned, focusing on entrepreneurs of color and women. to really make sure they get the access to capital of all the sorts I just mentioned and can grow their businesses. And we're really working with companies that are beyond startup phase, but they're still early stage. They're really trying to figure out, how do I go from organic growth to strategic growth? How do I get that capital that I need? And that's how we pick companies that way too. Do you have our social values in mind, but how are you really going to grow your company?
That's great. So what does that programming really look like?
So there's lots of things up there. There's pictures. It's nice. But at the end of the day, we're helping companies get investment ready. And for us, investment ready means that someone can see the value in your business. Either it's a capital provider, it's a strategic partner who wants to acquire you or work with you to help you grow, or the business can thrive without you. And we're really able to see companies really understand the value of their business and articulate that really well. And at the end of the day, our job is to help them raise capital, and so that's what we really strive to do. And then they get to go ask people for money through a pitch event, which is kind of fun for them, maybe. But it's scary asking people for money, so we try to equip them the best way that we can.
That's right. That's great. Thank you so much. You know, it's one of the things about ICA's investing activity that I find it particularly important is that if we look at the gender and the racial wealth gap, one of the things that we know about people of color and women that keeps them from being able to access capital as they grow their small business is lack of assets. So we use our capital as an asset on the balance sheet of these small businesses so that they can go out and get an SBA loan or a bank loan or a loan from one of our CDFI partners. And speaking of partners, the work that we do is really hard. I love this concept of farther together, this idea of an integrated ecosystem of support is really what we need. And we have partners in the room here tonight supporting us, and we really thank you for being here. Centra and Working Solutions, not to name any names. But it's organizations like SV2 also and Sobrato Foundation who have invested in ICA so that we can expand our work in San Jose in particular. So we've spent the last 18 months in San Jose, led by our colleague Ingrid Jacobson, who is developing relationships and doing a needs assessment, listening to the community. What do you have and what do you need? How can we complement and adapt our model to the needs in San Jose? And one of the things that we've learned and sort of been reminded again is that this is a long journey, It's not in 18 months we're going to support 10 companies and they're going to grow their revenues by 500%. It's like, in the last 18 months we've planted a lot of seeds. We're going to nurture these seeds and we're going to watch them grow in the community over time. And we're going to be by their side while they do it. So that is all that we shared. And what we wanted to do is keep it high level enough to see if there were any engaging questions. I know it's getting late, but if you have any other questions that you want to ask us while we're here, please feel free. No? We weren't, it's not, and don't be shy, but I know it's like sort of off the script to ask questions, but, hey, we learn. We want others to learn. Yeah.
Allowed to. So, thank you for being here. That was a very interesting talk, and it was very natural. Like the transition is very nice. So my question is, how do you select what organizations to partner with and to fund?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. I can talk about partnerships, and maybe you can talk about funding. Great. So I think because we know this, as Allison mentioned, this work is really hard to do by ourselves. And the stage of companies we work at is very particular. So it's early stage, they're going to get their seed round. So it's before they go out and get really big money, but it's after friends and family. So that's a very particular kind of stage of entrepreneurship. And we work with partners like Centra and Working Solutions who work with slightly earlier stage companies. So we're looking for partners who can help the entrepreneur along the continuum that could refer to us and that we could potentially refer back out. So there's a cycle of support. And we're also looking for partners who will help us get advisors. We work with pro bono advisors, so anytime there's an opportunity that we can be in the room with really smart people who can help our companies, we love that too. So that's how we pick some of our partners.
Perfect tee up for a little slight ask here that if any of you know or are interested in being advisors in our network in San Jose, we'd love to welcome you into our network. On the investing side, we're still developing our investment thesis for our next fund, but we're focused on entrepreneurs who have a growth mindset and a business model to support that growth mindset, and that their growth is dependent on the creation of jobs, and that they have a shared interest in the growth of that company. So what that means for us is looking at not only paying above minimum wage and providing benefits, but also thinking longer term about opportunities to share wealth that's created within the business, whether that's an ESOP or other non-traditional employee ownership sharing opportunities. Again, a job, like we talk a lot about affordable housing, especially in the Bay Area, and it is so important, and we're glad that conversation is going. And no house is affordable. No housing is affordable if you don't have a job. But a job is not a wealth creating opportunity in most cases. A job is a way to get by, and wealth creating opportunities, if we can help companies put that in their DNA and how they grow, that's the kind of change we want to see. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So there'll be an opportunity to ask questions directly to these guys in the next little while as we share more stories over dessert and coffee. So thank you all for coming tonight, being here, and please stay and continue to mingle. Thank you.